The statistics we just saw on food insecurity in Canada are shocking. Nearly 1 million people in our country are expected to visit a food bank for the first time in 2024. Canadians are clearly at a breaking point, and sadly, so are our local food charities. Joining me now is Neil Hetherington, Chief Executive Officer of Daily Bread Food Bank. Welcome to 100 Huntley Street, Neil.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're so thankful that you're joining us today. And the Daily Bread Food Bank puts out a report called Who's Hungry? And what we're seeing in this report is this increase in need for food charity services. What are some of the stats happening right now?
Well, it's been remarkable. You want to see growth in lots of businesses, but not the food bank. Before the pandemic, this past February, we saw about 55,000 client visits. This past February of 2024, we saw 301,000, 55,000 to 300,000. And that growth is replicated all across the country. There was about a 30% year-over-year growth across Canada in food bank usage. In Ontario, it was about 40%. In Toronto, it was 50%. To the point now that in Toronto, 1 in 10 now use the food bank. It's atrocious.
It's unbelievable. And the reality is that, many of the people using food banks there's usually at least 50% have one person in the household that's working. That's something else your report is showing, right?
Yeah, so we're seeing the demographics changing dramatically. Okay. And it used to be that if you went to school, you got a job, you work hard, you're going to be fine. You're going to live that Canadian dream. Yeah. 59% of food bank users have a post-secondary education. They've done everything right. They've gone on, they've got employment now, and yet they can't make ends meet. And so we have to ask, what are the systemic causes that are driving people to something that, when you and I were growing up, the food bank was kind of on the fringe. Yeah. It wasn't, it wasn't commonplace. It wasn't 1 in 10 Torontonians. It was something that was used on an extraordinary circumstance, usually on a temporary basis. And now we are seeing a massive change, a shift, and that is meaning that more and more Torontonians, more and more Canadians are doing everything right, but they have to go to a food bank because of a lack of affordable housing, primarily driving these numbers.
Well, it's interesting, Neil, because you said, when we were growing up, it wouldn't be common for someone to use a food bank. And I know I grew up in a home with a single mom, and we were stretched to make ends meet. And yet our family with 3 girls, we didn't have to go to a food bank. And so many people who are working, who have jobs, or, as you said, doing everything right by society's standards, and yet still can't make ends meet and need to use food bank services. When you talk about the connection between unaffordable housing, many people right now are choosing between paying for their groceries or paying for their rent.
Oh, that is common play. So there are 3 things that we sort of point to as the big buckets of why people are coming to food banks. So the first one is the lack of affordable housing. The second is income security. So you think about somebody on disability and you say to yourself, well, they're on disability, they're going to be okay. Well, that's not the case across the country. Yeah. They typically in Ontario, they would receive about $1,300 a month to survive on. And neither of us could survive on $1,300 a month. The poverty line is $2,300. So every month they're about $1,000 below the poverty line. And so we advocate very hard to make sure that those who are on income securities will hopefully one day receive the Canada Disability Benefit, that they will be able to have an income that allows them to afford their right to food. The third thing that we're seeing is a rise of precarious employment. So somebody might be employed, but they've put together 2 or 3 jobs. Well, that means that they don't have benefits. It means that they're making those choices that you're talking about between dental care for my child or prescription medications, heat, or the rent. And those are tough choices for people to be put in.
Neil, for our viewers watching right now, so many are followers of Jesus, and we know that Jesus told us to do unto others as we would have them do unto us, to be neighborly, to take care of those around us who are at risk and struggling. What can Canadian Christians do to help mitigate this issue?
Well, I think they can, put their faith into action, and that action can take a variety of forms. It can be, volunteering at a food bank. It can be making a donation to a food bank. But very simply, it can be letting any elected official of any party say, just letting them know that today is the day to implement the poverty reduction strategy. all governments have a poverty reduction strategy. Some are better at implementing it than others. And I think this is an opportunity for us to raise a collective voice and say it is wrong, it is fundamentally wrong that anyone should be in a country as beautiful as ours is, living in poverty and having to rely on food charity. So let's do something about it. And we know those policy solutions like the Canada Disability Benefit, like the development of affordable housing. These are the types of things that will give individuals a sense of hope in their community.
So true, Neil, and thank you for those pointers on how Canadians can take action. And of course, asking our viewers to continue to pray about this issue is so important and so powerful. Neil, thank you for everything you do to help Canadians across the country and for what your organization, the Daily Bread Food Bank, is doing.
Thanks so much.